Hello again, back with chapter 6 today of Frostheart. Yesterday, Ash had snuck down with a mask on so that Toby hadn't noticed him to go to this festival that he's not allowed to go to. So let's see what happens next. Chapter 6, Fire. Everywhere they looked, the Fira ate, drank and laughed. Their extravagant masks are varied and colourful as the spirits they represented. There was food the likes of which Ash had only dreamed of back in his tower, and the smells of roasting meat, cooking spices, and flame-baked cakes made his mouth water. And all around the village, in every nook and cranny, were lights, torches and candles, hanging lanterns and bonfires. The village was almost as bright as Mother Sun herself. People waved and greeted Ash and his friends as they passed. It felt strange to Ash at first. He clung to his mask for dear life, worried that they might see through his disguise, but it soon became apparent that no one was any the wiser. He even spotted Tobu standing alone in the shadow of the alderman's lodge, his face as bright and chipper as dirty brown snow slush. A kind passerby offered him a mask to wear, and Tobu pushed it aside with disdain. Yikes, just try to relax for once, thought Ash, before hurrying past. Further on, a storyteller held a group of children and adults enraptured by the tale of a pathfinder's journey to the greatest stronghold of them all, Aurora. And thus our hero travelled further than you can imagine, gliding across the oceans of ice upon his mighty sleigh. The storyteller stooped low, only to leap up high, making hand gestures to represent a sleigh travelling the great distances across the snow sea, until his journey at last came to an end, the jewel of the snow sea shining bright before him. His heart lifted high at the sight of fair Aurora's might. Ash's imagination ran wild at these stories. He would often dream of leaving the Fira walls and following in his parents' footsteps on the path of adventure, setting off into the wilds on a sleigh. What wonders must lie out there, what sights! And in the centre of it all, Aurora, the biggest settlement in the world, the central stronghold, the meeting place of the Pathfinders. Ash had heard wondrous tales of the place, of its soaring spires and monuments that could have only been built by giants, but, of course, had never seen it with his own eyes. Spirits, he would love to go there one day. Next, friends gathered round a thrilling display of fire dancing. Each dancer held a long stick, both ends ablaze, twirling them round in complicated motions and wide circles. Just as it looked as though one dancer would strike another with their flame, they would deftly weave between each other to the gasp of the audience. The whole dance was done in an almost eerie silence, the dancers moving to the sounds of the crackling bonfires and the whooshing of the fire sticks. Ash couldn't help but think how impressive and stirring the show would have been with music, drums, ocarinas, singing. Fancy giving it a go? Laughed a girl dancer, pointing a spare fire stick in Ash's direction. She was about Ash's height and wearing the mask of a snarling wolver spirit. Me? I don't know really, Ash began, but it was no use. The girl pulled him into the circle of dancers, placing the fire stick into his hands and raising her own. Ash tried again. I don't know how. I'll show you, the girl answered. She spun her stick slowly round and round, and Ash tried his best to copy. He felt like his arms were getting tangled, that the flames were too close to his mask, which suddenly felt far too big and flammable. But it didn't seem to bother the girl one bit. She ducked and wove about him, laughing and cheering the whole while. Her happiness was infectious. Ash started laughing too, even though he probably looked more like a demented ulk rather than a dancer. Now you're getting it, the girl encouraged. People clapped and urged the dancing partners on. Ash didn't want the dance to end. He felt like he could have danced all night, danced forever. But eventually Ash and the girl had to stand to the side to catch their breath. He leaned his fire stick on his shoulder, sweating despite the cold air. Wow, you're on fire, the girl said. Ash grinned. He suspected she was being generous, but he appreciated it nonetheless. I think I started to get the hang of it at the end, right? He said. No, I mean, you're actually on fire, said the girl. Ash's eyes widened as he realised the ember-hot end of the fire stick had set the furs at his shoulder alight. Ah! He dived down into the wet snow and rolled round, desperate to put the fire out, the girl helping to pat out the flames. When it was clear that Ash was no longer alight, nor likely to set anything else aflame, they both started laughing. Hey, so, who are you? The girl asked in between giggles. I mean, under your mask. She raised her own and revealed her face. It was Borea, a girl who would never normally give Ash a second glance in lessons. Ash's stomach tied into a knot. He began. Sorry, I just remembered, Hey! Came Rice's voice, just in the nick of time. He slipped between Ash and Borea. May I have this dance? He said, wiggling his eyebrows up and down at Borea and taking Ash's fire stick. Borea didn't look convinced, but her features became friendlier as she took a closer look at Rice. Are you dressed up as a frost bear? She asked, taking her own fire stick. I love frost bears. As a matter of fact, I am, Rice said, leading her back into the dance. Ash could almost feel Shine rolling her eyes at the whole scene. Thank you, Ash whispered to Rice. Rice grinned and nodded before spinning his fire stick in such a wide circle he managed to knock Borea's mask off. But before the children had time to laugh, a sudden hush fell over the crowd. As if an unspoken word, the villagers began to stamp their feet as one. It felt like the fear of Stronghold had a heartbeat of its own. Boom! 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 It's time! Called one villager. Fira, prepare your offerings, called out a Lightbringer, silhouetted against the great pyre, the most sacred spot in the stronghold. It was a giant flame that was said to have been burning for 200 years. As the village gathered around, an old lady passed something to Ash. It was an object made of woven twigs in the shape of a 5-pointed star, a star offering. The Fira would sculpt these offerings, set them alight just before dawn, scaring away the ice-crowned night and welcoming in Mother Sun. The Lightbringers began their prayers as the crowd marched forward and dipped towards into the great pyre. One by one, the Fira lit their star offerings. Make a wish, the old lady said to Ash as he pulled his own torch from the bonfire. He hesitated before stealing himself away to a shadowed, unwatched corner. Ash lifted the mask from his face, just in case the spirits got confused as to who was making the wish. Swallowing back a lump in his throat, he began. I wish that I could find my parents. I wish for a proper home, for a family. With that, he touched his torch to the star offering, and soon it was ablaze. All around him, the Fira watched the offerings dance and flicker in flames. It was so beautiful. Ash felt like the stars had come down to visit the stronghold. As if hearing her children's call, light pierced the night sky, and Mother Sun began to awaken on the horizon. But as he watched the sunrise, Ash couldn't help but feel sadness pulling at him. The festival was nearly over. He would soon have to go back to his tower, back to Tobu, before the villagers began to take their masks off, before the people saw who he really was. Awoo! So lost in his thoughts was Ash, it took him a while to notice the horn sounding from the battlements. Distant calls and shouts could be heard. The crowd shifted nervously. What's happening? Someone asked. Awoo! Awoo! Ash's heart caught in his throat as he realised what he was hearing. The warning horn. The Leviathans. They're attacking. End of chapter 6.